Nevada Territory, 1878. The gold-streaked sunset bathed Cottonwood Station in a warm glow as the westbound train from Carson City rolled to a steaming halt. Russell Cooper stood on the platform, his weathered Stetson clutched against his chest, while his 5-year-old daughter Emma fidgeted beside him in her Sunday dress. "Stand still, little one," Russell murmured, placing a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. His heart hammered against his ribs like a wild Mustang. 3 years had passed since he'd penned that desperate letter to the Boston Herald's matrimonial column. 3 months since he'd received her reply, elegant handwriting on cream-colored paper that smelled faintly of lavender. The conductor called out, "Cottonwood Station. 15 minutes," as passengers began disembarking. Russell scanned each face, wondering if she had changed her mind. Emma tugged at his hand, her eyes wide with excitement. "Which one is she, Papa? Which one is our new mama?" Russell swallowed hard. "I don't know, darling. I've only seen her photograph." Then, as the crowd parted, a slender woman in a practical traveling suit of deep blue stepped onto the platform. She carried a single valise and wore a small hat adorned with a modest ribbon. Beneath it, copper-colored hair was twisted into a neat chignon. She glanced around uncertainly, her posture straight, but her free hand fidgeting with the button of her glove. Emma went suddenly still, then yanked on Russell's arm and pointed. "Look, Papa! Look! God finally sent our mama." Her voice rang out across the platform, causing several heads to turn. The woman in blue looked toward them, her eyes finding Russell's. A small, nervous smile touched her lips. "Miss Catherine Grayson?" Russell managed, stepping forward. "Mr. Cooper," she replied with a slight nod. Her voice was softer than he'd imagined, with a gentle Eastern accent that seemed to float on the dry desert air. Russell cleared his throat. "This is my daughter, Emma." Catherine Grayson knelt down, her skirts settling around her in a perfect circle. "Hello, Emma. I'm very pleased to meet you." Emma stared at her with unblinking solemnity before announcing, "Your hair is the same color as the pennies Papa keeps in his desk." Catherine's laugh was like water in the desert, unexpected and precious. What a lovely way to describe it. "May I say your eyes are the same color as the summer sky?" Emma beamed, then without warning, threw her arms around Catherine's neck. "I knew you'd come. I prayed every night." Over the child's shoulder, Catherine's eyes met Russell's. Something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or hope. Russell felt the weight of the past 3 years lighten, just a fraction. "Welcome to Cottonwood Station, Miss Grayson." "Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I believe I am exactly where I need to be." The wagon journey to the Cooper Ranch took nearly 2 hours. Catherine sat beside Russell on the bench seat, Emma between them, chattering away about everything from her favorite doll to the names of all 27 cattle Russell owned. "Papa says the drought's been bad this year, but our creek still has water because it comes from underground," Emma explained importantly. "That's why our ranch is special." "Is that so?" Catherine smiled, adjusting her hat against the setting sun. "It sounds wonderful." Russell stole glances at her profile, trying to reconcile the woman from the letters, educated, thoughtful, surprisingly witty, with this flesh-and-blood person beside him. Her letters had revealed a schoolteacher with a practical mind and a kind heart, but they hadn't prepared him for the gentle curve of her jaw or the quiet dignity with which she held herself. "I should explain about our arrangement." Russell began awkwardly as they crested a hill that revealed the valley beyond. "The ranch house isn't fancy, but it's solid. For rooms, with a real glass window in each one," Emma interjected proudly. Russell nodded. "You'll have your own room, of course." "Emma, and I thought you might like the east bedroom. Gets the morning light." "That sounds lovely," Catherine replied. Then, after a pause, "Mr. Cooper, I want to be clear about my expectations, as I believe you were in your letters. I came here understanding this is a practical arrangement. You need someone to help with Emma and the household. I need—" She hesitated. "A fresh start," Russell finished for her. She nodded, her eyes on the distant mountains. "Precisely. The town's small but decent. There's a school that could use a proper teacher. The mining company pays for it, but they've had trouble keeping anyone out here long enough." "I'd like that very much," Catherine said. Then, more quietly, "I should tell you I received 3 other offers of marriage from my advertisement. I chose yours because you wrote about your daughter before you wrote about yourself." Russell felt heat creep up his neck. "Well, she's the important one. Papa says I'm the best thing God ever gave him, Emma declared, oblivious to the adult's discomfort. Catherine's smile deepened. Your papa sounds like a wise man. The wagon rounded a bend, and suddenly, Cooper Ranch came into view. A sturdy log house with a wide front porch, a barn with a fresh coat of red paint, corrals, and outbuildings nestled against the foothills. Cottonwoods lined the creek, their leaves shimmering silver green in the evening light. It's beautiful, Catherine said softly. Russell felt an unexpected pride. It's not much, but no, she interrupted. It truly is beautiful. For the first time since stepping off the train, she looked completely certain. As Russell helped her down from the wagon, their hands touched, and he was struck by how small her fingers were beneath her gloves, and how strong her grip. This was not a woman who shied away from work, despite her refined manners. Miss Grayson, Catherine, I want you to know there's no rush to. He stumbled over the words. What I mean is, we agreed to a month's acquaintance before any formal arrangement. I'll honor that. Catherine looked up at him, her green eyes clear and direct. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I appreciate your understanding. Emma had already raced to the house, calling for Mrs. Winters, the neighbor who had been staying with her. The older woman appeared at the door, wiping her hands on her apron. So you're the Eastern lady, Mrs. Winters announced, looking Catherine up and down appraisingly. Well, you're a sight prettier than your photograph, I'll give you that. Mrs. Winters, Russell warned, but Catherine merely smiled. Thank you for looking after Emma. It's clear she's been very well cared for. Mrs. Winters snorted, but Russell could tell she was pleased. Girl needs a mother's hand. Been telling Russell that since Mary passed, the mention of his late wife hung in the air like wood smoke. Russell saw Catherine register the name, file it away without comment. She was observant, this schoolteacher from Boston. I've made a stew, and there's fresh bread, Mrs. Winters continued. Figured you'd be tired from traveling. That's very kind, Catherine replied, and Russell could see she meant it. Later, after Mrs. Winters had gone home and Emma was tucked into bed, Russell showed Catherine to her room. It wasn't much, a narrow bed with a quilt Mary had made before Emma was born, a washstand with a blue and white pitcher, a small chest of drawers, and a rocking chair by the window. Emma and I put wildflowers in the vase, Russell said, gesturing to the nightstand. Her idea. Catherine touched the colorful blooms gently. Please thank her for me. She looked around the simple room, and for a moment, Russell feared she was comparing it to whatever fine home she'd left behind in Boston. Instead, she said, I haven't had a room of my own since I was a girl. My position at the academy included board with 3 other teachers. Russell nodded, uncertain what to say. He'd never been good with words. That's why Mary had always. But no, he wouldn't think about that now. Well, he said finally, good night, Miss Grayson. She turned to him, her face softened in the lamplight. Good night, Mr. Cooper. And thank you for bringing me here. As he closed the door, Russell wondered what she was running from. Everyone who came west was running from something, or towards something else. Sometimes both. Her letters had mentioned a position lost when the girls' academy downsized, a widowed mother recently deceased, no siblings or close family. But Russell Cooper knew there was always more to the story, just as there was more to his. The first week passed in a whirlwind of adjustments. Catherine proved herself adept and willing, rising early to help with breakfast, establishing a routine for Emma's lessons, and quickly learning the rhythms of ranch life. She seemed determined to earn her keep, even before any formal arrangement was settled. Russell found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. The way she tucked stray hairs behind her ear as she bent over Emma's slate, the careful precision with which she folded laundry, the genuine delight on her face when she discovered the small library of books he kept in the parlor. Dickens, she had exclaimed, running her fingers over the spines. And Austen. Mr. Cooper, I wouldn't have expected. He'd shrugged, embarrassed. Mary loved reading. I kept up the habit after she died. Helps pass the winter evenings. Something had softened in Catherine's expression then. It's a wonderful collection. By the end of the week, Russell had arranged for Catherine to meet with the mining company's representative about the teaching position. She returned from town with bright eyes and flushed cheeks. They've offered me the position, she told him as he worked in the barn. 20 children, ages 6 to 14. The term starts in 3 weeks. That's good news, Russell said, pausing in his work of repairing a harness. What about our arrangement? Catherine's smile faltered slightly. I thought perhaps we might continue as we are for now. I can contribute to the household from my teaching wages. It would give us more time to. She trailed off, uncertain. Russell nodded, ignoring the twist of disappointment in his gut. Of course. No rush. He turned back to the harness, focusing on the worn leather beneath his fingers. Emma's taken quite a shine to you. And I to her, Catherine replied softly. She reminds me of myself at that age. Curious about everything. Russell glanced up. You don't talk much about your life back east. A shadow crossed her face. There's not much to tell that I haven't already shared in my letters. My father was a banker, my mother taught piano. I was their only child, something of a disappointment to my father, who wanted sons to carry on the business. I can't imagine anyone being disappointed in you, Russell said before he could stop himself. A flush crept up Catherine's neck. That's kind of you to say. She hesitated, then added, Mr. Cooper, I hope you know how grateful I am for this opportunity. When my mother died and the academy reduced its staff, I found myself in rather desperate circumstances. We all have our reasons for the choices we make, Russell replied. No need to explain yourself to me. She studied him for a moment. You're not what I expected, Russell Cooper. It was the first time she'd used his given name. The sound of it on her lips made his heart beat faster. Neither are you, Catherine Grayson. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spider silk. Then Emma's voice called from the house, breaking the spell. Catherine, Papa. Mrs. Winters brought pie. Catherine smiled. We shouldn't keep pie waiting. As they walked toward the house together, Russell fought the urge to offer his arm. It was too soon. They had agreed to a month's acquaintance, and he was determined to be a man of his word. But watching Catherine kneel to brush dust from Emma's pinafore, her copper hair glowing in the afternoon sun, Russell wondered if a month would be nearly long enough to guard his heart. The second week brought an unexpected crisis. Russell returned from checking the north pasture to find Catherine at the kitchen table, Emma on her lap, the child's face flushed and eyes glassy with fever. She was fine this morning, Catherine explained, her voice tight with worry. Then after lunch, she said her throat hurt, and now she's burning up. Russell placed a hand on his daughter's forehead, alarm spreading through him at the heat radiating from her skin. I'll ride for the doctor. Wait, Catherine said, reaching for her handbag. I have some willow bark powder. My mother swore by it for fevers. Let me make her a tea while you fetch the doctor. Russell hesitated, then nodded. I'll be back as soon as I can. The ride to town and back with Dr. Harrison took over 3 hours. When they returned, Russell found Catherine sitting in the rocking chair by Emma's bed, singing softly while pressing cool cloths to the child's forehead. Her fever's come down a little, Catherine reported, rising as the doctor entered. She managed to drink most of the tea. Dr. Harrison examined Emma thoroughly, his weathered face serious. Throat infection, most likely. Several children in town have it. Nothing too concerning yet, but we'll need to watch her closely. Will she be all right? Russell asked, the fear he'd been holding at bay threatening to overwhelm him. With proper care, yes, the doctor replied, mixing a powder into a glass of water. She needs to drink plenty of fluids. This will help with the pain and fever. Keep her comfortable and cool. After the doctor left, Russell and Catherine established a schedule, taking turns sitting with Emma throughout the night. In the darkest hours, Russell found Catherine still awake, singing softly to his daughter. You should rest, he whispered from the doorway. I can take over. Catherine shook her head. I'm not tired. Besides, she seems to like the songs. Russell entered the room quietly, pulling up Emma's small desk chair to sit beside them. What are you singing? Old lullabies my mother taught me, Catherine replied. Nothing special. It sounds special to me, Russell said. I'm not much for singing myself. Mary used to sing to her, but after. Catherine reached across the sleeping child and briefly touched his hand. You don't have to explain. 3 years, Russell said anyway. Childbirth fever. Doctor couldn't do anything. Catherine nodded, her eyes filled with compassion. I'm so sorry, Russell. I wasn't looking to replace her, he said suddenly, needing Catherine to understand. When I wrote that advertisement, I mean, no one could replace Mary. But Emma needs a mother, and I. He trailed off, unable to articulate the loneliness that had driven him to reach out to a stranger across the continent. I understand, Catherine said softly, and I wasn't looking to replace anyone either, just to find somewhere I might belong. Emma stirred between them, whimpering in her sleep. Catherine immediately turned her attention back to the child, humming softly and stroking her hair until she settled. Russell watched them. This woman who had appeared in their lives just 2 weeks ago, already so gentle and sure with his daughter. Something shifted in his chest, not the ghost of his feelings for Mary, but something new, something tentative and fragile, like the first green shoot after a long winter. Dawn found them still sitting together, Emma's fever finally broken, all three of them drifting in and out of exhausted sleep. Russell awoke fully to find Catherine's head resting against the back of the rocking chair, her eyes closed, one hand still holding Emma's. The morning light illuminated her face, revealing freckles across her nose and shadows beneath her eyes. In that moment, Russell knew with absolute certainty that he wanted her to stay, not just for Emma, not just for practical reasons, but for himself. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, Catherine Grayson had begun to feel like home. As Emma recovered, life at Cooper Ranch settled into a new rhythm. Catherine began preparing for her teaching position, often sitting on the porch in the evenings, making notes and planning lessons while Russell worked nearby, mending tack or whittling small wooden animals for Emma. These quiet evenings became Russell's favorite part of the day. Sometimes they talked about books, about Emma's education, about the ranch and its needs. Other times they simply worked in companionable silence. The only sounds the creak of Catherine's rocking chair and the whisper of Russell's knife against wood. One evening, as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue sky, Catherine looked up from her notes and asked, "Why did you decide to become a rancher, Russell? Your letters mentioned you weren't born to it." Russell considered the question, setting aside the half-finished horse he was carving. "My father was a wheelwright in Missouri. Honest work, but I always felt confined. After the war, I couldn't settle back into that life. Too many ghosts." He paused, remembering. "I headed west with nothing but what I could carry and the determination to see the sky from horizon to horizon every day. And you found this place," Catherine said, gesturing to the land around them. Russell nodded. "Worked for 3 years on a big cattle outfit near Carson City. Saved every penny. When this land came up for sale, I knew it was where I wanted to put down roots. Met Mary in town not long after. She was working at the Mercantile, new to the territory herself. She must have been very brave," Catherine observed, "to marry a man she barely knew and come to such a remote place." "She was," Russell agreed. "Braver than me in many ways." He looked at Catherine directly. "Like you." Catherine's hands stilled on her papers. "I'm not brave, Russell. Coming here was self-preservation, not courage." "Takes courage to travel across the country to marry a stranger," Russell countered. "Especially one with a child." Catherine was silent for a moment. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, "I couldn't stay in Boston. Not after what happened." Russell waited, sensing she needed to tell this story at her own pace. "I told you I lost my position at the academy when they reduced staff," she continued, her eyes on the distant mountains. "That was true. What I didn't say was why I was chosen to leave." She took a deep breath. "The headmaster's son had been persistent in his attentions toward me for months. I refused him repeatedly, but politely. I needed the position, after all. But after my mother died, he became more aggressive. When I rejected his final proposal, he told his father I had been the one pursuing him inappropriately." Russell's hands tightened around the piece of wood he was carving. "And they believed him?" Catherine nodded. "Of course they did. He was heir to the academy's founder. I was just a teacher with no family connections left to speak for me." She smoothed her skirt nervously. "My reputation wasn't publicly ruined. They were discreet enough for that. But word spread in certain circles. No respectable school in Boston would hire me." "So you came west," Russell said, understanding dawning. "So I came west," she echoed, "where perhaps a woman might be judged by her character rather than by malicious gossip." Russell set down his carving and moved to sit beside her on the porch step. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "Catherine, I want you to know that I believe you. And that man, that coward, if he were here right now, then I would not be the woman you think I am," Catherine said firmly. "Because I would have to demonstrate exactly how accurately I can throw a rock at a deserving target." The unexpected response startled a laugh from Russell. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Catherine's lips curved into a smile. "I should hope you never do." They sat together in silence as darkness fell completely, the vast canopy of stars spreading overhead. 3 weeks, Russell said finally, since you stepped off that train. 3 weeks tomorrow, Catherine confirmed. Russell turned to face her. We agreed to a month before making any decisions about our arrangement. Catherine nodded, her expression unreadable in the darkness. I don't need another week, Russell said quietly. I know what I want, Catherine. I want you to stay. Not just as Emma's teacher, not just as a practical solution, but as my wife. If that's still what you want. Catherine was silent for so long that Russell began to fear he'd misread everything. Then she reached out and took his hand, her fingers cool against his palm. I came here expecting a partnership of convenience, she said slowly. I thought perhaps, in time, we might develop a friendship. I never expected. She paused. I never expected to feel at home so quickly. I never expected you, Russell Cooper. Is that a yes? He asked, hardly daring to breathe. It's a yes, she replied. But Russell, I need you to understand something. I'm not Mary. I can't replace her in your heart, and I wouldn't want to try. I know that, he said gently. Just as I know I'm not asking you to forget your past or what brought you here. We both carry our histories with us, Catherine. But I believe we can build something new together, something that honors what came before but doesn't live in its shadow. Catherine squeezed his hand. When did a rancher from Nevada Territory become so wise? Probably around the time a schoolteacher from Boston taught him to hope again, Russell replied. In the starlight, Catherine's smile was the most beautiful thing Russell had ever seen. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and a promise combined. When they separated, Catherine's eyes were shining. Emma will be pleased, she whispered. She's been asking every day when I'm going to become her mama for real. Russell chuckled. That child has never been one for patience. A quality she clearly inherits from her father, Catherine teased, and Russell felt his heart expand with joy at the sound of her laughter. They were married 2 weeks later in Cottonwood Station's small church, with Emma as their only attendant, proudly scattering wildflower petals down the aisle ahead of Catherine. The bride wore a simple dress of deep blue. The same color as the dress I wore when we first met, she told Russell, with white lace at the collar and cuffs. The entire community turned out for the occasion. The ranchers and their wives, the miners from the surrounding camps, the shopkeepers, and the saloon owner, who closed his establishment for the afternoon out of respect. Even Mrs. Winters dabbed at her eyes during the ceremony, though she later claimed it was merely dust. Never thought he'd find anyone willing to take on him and that wild child, she told anyone who would listen at the reception. But I suppose Eastern ladies don't know any better. Catherine, overhearing this, merely smiled and replied, On the contrary, Mrs. Winters, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. That's why I said yes. The schoolroom had been decorated with ribbons and more wildflowers for the celebration afterward. As fiddles played and neighbors brought out dishes for a communal feast, Russell found a moment alone with his new wife near the punch bowl. Happy, Mrs. Cooper? He asked, still marveling at the change in her name and in his life. Completely, Mr. Cooper, she replied, her eyes bright with joy. Though I must say, I'm rather looking forward to returning home. The way she said home, so naturally, as if Cooper Ranch had always been where she belonged, filled Russell with a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat. The new family returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the valley in hues of gold and amber. Emma, exhausted from the excitement, fell asleep before they even reached the house. Russell carried her to her bed while Catherine changed out of her wedding dress. When he entered their bedroom, no longer just his, but theirs, Catherine was standing by the window in a nightgown of simple white cotton, her copper hair loose around her shoulders. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, and the look in her eyes made his breath catch. Come here, she said softly, holding out her hand. Russell crossed the room, taking her offered hand and drawing her close. I never thought I'd find this again, he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. Someone to share my life with. Someone to love. Catherine reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. I never thought I would find it at all, she whispered. Thank you for proving me wrong. Their kiss deepened, no longer tentative but certain, filled with promise and desire and the beginning of a love that would only grow stronger with time. Later, as moonlight spilled across their bed, Catherine rested her head on Russell's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I've been thinking," she murmured. Russell stroked her hair, marveling at its softness between his fingers. "About what Emma said that first day at the train station. About God sending her mama." Russell chuckled. "That child has never known the meaning of subtlety." "No, but she was right," Catherine said, propping herself up on one elbow to look at him. "I believe we were meant to find each other, Russell. Call it providence or fate or simply good fortune, but I believe this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Russell pulled her close again, breathing in the lavender scent of her hair. "Then we're in complete agreement, Mrs. Cooper, because I can't imagine you being anywhere else." Outside their window, a shooting star streaked across the Nevada sky, a fleeting moment of brilliance against the infinite darkness. But inside the sturdy ranch house, something far more enduring had taken root. A family forged not by blood but by choice, by courage, and by love that had crossed a continent to find its home. In the room down the hall, Emma Cooper slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that her prayers had been answered. And in the master bedroom, Russell and Catherine held each other close, no longer a rancher and a schoolteacher brought together by circumstance, but husband and wife, bound by something far stronger than the practical arrangement that had first connected them. They had both traveled long roads to reach this moment, roads marked by loss and disappointment and dreams deferred. But as the night deepened around them, those roads converged into a single path stretching out before them, leading toward a future they would build together, day by day, under the vast and watchful Nevada sky.